Okay, today we're going to respond or talk about the comment that's made these days about the Big Bang Theory. I don't believe in God. I can't believe in a God that I can't see. I believe in the Big Bang Theory. I've heard that comment several times. My dad has made that statement before. I can't believe in a God that I can't see. And other people made the comment, I believe in the Big Bang Theory. Well, let's talk about that for a few minutes and respond to those comments. And so I'd like to say, first of all, if you took a big giant rock, because the Big Bang Theory essentially says that everything at one time was one gigantic mass and it exploded, and as a result of that, we have all the different planets and all the different galaxies and things of that nature. And that's really, if it doesn't take much thoughtful consideration to realize that that just doesn't make any sense at all. And sometimes we need to think about these things that we choose to put our faith in, and really think about, is there any common sense involved in those statements? Is it practical? All right. So if you took a big giant rock and you took a maul and you hit that rock and broke it into 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000 pieces, and you picked up big pieces of that rock and you analyzed that rock, you would see that they contain essentially the same elements because they came from the same source. So with that being the case, if the Big Bang Theory is correct, then we ought to not have to look very hard for life on other planets. Because beings that we all came from the same big rock, then all those other planets should contain essentially the same elements that we find on Earth. We shouldn't have to look hard for water, plants, trees, birds, animals, and humans. If we all came from the same source, then all those planets ought to essentially contain the same basic elements. And as far as we know, they don't. They don't. We try so hard to find water buried beneath all the different planet rocks on different planets and things of that nature. But we should not have to look that hard if each planet came from the same source. All right, so that kind of knocks that theory right out of the water. Now, some people will say, I can't believe in a creator that I can't see. It's easier for me to believe in the Big Bang Theory. And I want to say this, that all you have to do is look around with your eyes and just give some thoughtful consideration to a few things I'd like to say. One is, even if you never saw the creator, the inventor, if you will, or creator of everything that you see with your natural eyes, you know that there's a source behind those things that you see. Everything that you see speaks of design and purpose. Someone designed it and had a purpose for its intended use. If you looked at an automobile, you would not say that automobile always existed. It has design and it has purpose. And you know that there's a source greater than the automobile that designed and had a purpose for the automobile, a purpose for its intended use. If you looked at your television and didn't really know what a television was, you would not say to yourself, oh, it was always there. No, because it has design and purpose. If you looked at your tennis shoes or even your toothbrush, if you picked up a toothbrush and never saw a toothbrush before, you would look at that toothbrush and you would say, you know what? This is designed with a handle and bristles, and it seems to have a design and a purpose for it. Someone designed this thing and has a purpose for its intended use. If you're going to be honest with yourself, you're going to have to be honest enough to admit that everything that you look around and see, from the chair you're sitting on, the automobile you drive, the brush or comb you use to comb your hair, the toothbrush you use to brush your teeth, all speaks of design and purpose. And if you can't explain an automobile, a television, a pair of tennis shoes, or even your toothbrush without being honest enough to admit that there's a source greater than the toothbrush that made the toothbrush did not always exist, Now, some people will say, I can't believe in a creator that I can't see. No, that's not true either. That's not true. You might not never have seen the person that designed your automobile. You may never see the person that designed those tennis shoes, designed your TV, or designed that toothbrush that you brush your teeth with. Let me tell you something. Some people say, all there is to life is what I can see. And no, that is not true. That is not true. I want you to give some thoughtful consideration to this. The life in the oceans, all the fish in the ocean, all the different ocean life that's there, if they could converse and talk to one another and communicate with one another, and one of those fish would be a dolphin that jumps up out of the water and in, and it went down and it said, hey, to the other fish that can't jump out of the water, and it said, hey, there is another world outside this watery existence. It's a far greater world. There's a higher level, if you will. There's beautiful paintings, and there's automobiles, and there's people, and there's mansions, and there's all this higher level of reality, if you will. And the other fish goes, well, I haven't seen it, so I don't believe it. Now, would it make it any less real because the fish that were not able to jump up out of the water like the dolphins do, because they can't do that? Would it make the higher level of reality any less real? Now, the same thing can be said of heaven, my friend. I want you to think about this. Even if we were to take some of those fish and those life in the ocean out of the water, we took them out, and we brought them on the planet Earth, and we say, look, I want to show you a much higher level of reality for you to see. And we took them to our museums and showed them all the fine, beautiful paintings, and we showed them people and the beautiful people and the attractive, beautiful people that we have on the actors and the models, and we let them listen to beautiful entertainers that can sing beautifully, and we showed them the fine jewelry and the beautiful cars and the fine mansions and all that. It really wouldn't matter because they could not comprehend it. They would not be able to grasp this higher level of reality. And I'm going to say this. That's the reason why down here we are limited in our understanding of the heavenly, because while we are down here on planet Earth, we have limitations. It's almost like the life in the ocean could not comprehend life on planet Earth outside of that watery existence. But just because they can't comprehend it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And just because we can't comprehend everything about heaven doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Let me tell you something. To try to explain heaven to human beings sometimes, unless we're really spiritual and praying and have that revelation from God, is like trying to explain a computer to an ant. It's just impossible unless the Spirit of God quickens and enlightens us. You see, once the Spirit of God begins to instruct us and teach us, then we begin to see clearer and clearer eternal and spiritual things. So, just because we can't see heaven doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just because the life in the great oceans live there and say to one another, if they could, all there is to life is water, would they be right? Of course not. And some human beings like to say all there is to life is what I see on earth. Are they right? Of course not. Some people will say, wait a minute, we hear all this talk about these believers, Christians, supposed to fly up into heaven. Jesus is coming, they say. The dead are going to raise from the dead. Can you believe that? And so a lot of people will mock the believers, the Christians, because they believe in a resurrection. They believe in a changing of our bodies from a natural to a spiritual. And so most people can't comprehend that. So it's easier for them to think about the Big Bang Theory and just end it at that. But my friend, let me tell you something. The more you study spiritual things, the more you pray and become in a spiritual state, the more spiritually enlightened you will become. I want to say this to you, that the Bible does say that one day the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. And I've heard people say time and time again, well, how in the world can that happen? That's impossible. So I will share another lesson, and I'll give you a little bit of it in this video because I want to bring this home to your heart. Within the believer, there's two natures. All of us, really, there's two natures, the natural and there's the spiritual. And so here's the thing. Look at it this way. We in this natural body have limitations. There's a lot of things that we cannot do. And God gave us examples of that. If you take a caterpillar, as long as they're in that stage, in that phase of their existence, they have limitations. You could take that caterpillar and throw it up into the air and it's going to come crashing down because it's in its old or first form or nature. And so it's restricted and limited by its old nature. And we as believers are limited and restricted by our old nature. We're like the caterpillar, if you will. But when Jesus comes back and the Spirit of God quickens us and quickens that dust, those bones in the grave, they will become a heavenly body. They will take on a heavenly form. We that are alive and remain will be changed. We'll put on our heavenly form, our heavenly glory, if you will. And what at one time was impossible will now become possible. That caterpillar, as long as it's in that old nature, it's limited and it's restricted. It's held down to the earth. But once it changes and becomes a butterfly, what was at one time impossible now becomes possible. It can fly because of the new nature. And we, my friend, were designed by God to one day leave this old nature behind, our caterpillar, if you will, existence behind, and take the form of the spiritual or the butterfly nature, if you will. And what at one time was impossible will now become possible. Those bodies in the grave will be changed. They will have that glorified body. And what was at one time impossible will now become possible. They will raise from the dead in that glorified state. And we which are alive shall raise with them to meet the Lord in the air. Let me tell you something. That's a miraculous thing. And we'll talk more about that in other videos. But I hope the Big Bang Theory and how ridiculous that is, I hope some of what we talked about on this video has shared a little bit of understanding and enlightenment. And if it does that, I feel that perhaps in some small way the Lord is pleased. If you have any questions, send them to Honorgodmyking at AOL.com or comments, and we'll address those comments. Hope this was helpful to you. And if it was, sometimes just send us a little email and let us know, what you got from it. And thanks and God bless and have a good night.